Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. There is a morning somewhere out there in your future where an older version of you is going to sit down, pour a cup of coffee, and check a bank balance. That morning is coming for all of us. The only thing still undecided is how you're actually going to feel when you look at that number. Are you going to feel this quiet sense of confidence, or are you going to feel a sickening knot in your stomach? Well, what's fascinating is that this feeling is being decided right now, today, by your daily financial habits. And to understand exactly how that works, we're going to look at a pretty wild paradox involving two factory workers, Dave and Mike. Just look at the contrast here between Dave and Mike. These guys spent 3 whole decades working side by side on the exact same factory floor in Ohio. They brought home nearly identical paychecks, and honestly, neither man ever earned more than $70,000 a year. Yet today, Dave is checking his balance with that knot in his stomach, relying entirely on a single Social Security deposit to survive. Mike, on the other hand, literally just paid cash for a lake cabin. No mortgage, just cash. 2 men, one identical job, but completely opposite retirements. So the absolute crucial takeaway right off the bat is this: your income alone does not dictate your retirement success. If your entire game plan is just to earn more money, well, this explainer is going to be incredibly useful and maybe even a little uncomfortable, because we are going to look at the exact numbers and daily behaviors that actually separate Dave and Mike. Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1, the retirement income illusion. A lot of us kind of just assume a big salary automatically guarantees a golden retirement. But to figure out where you're actually headed, you've got to look at the right metric. Income is really just what flows through your hands, right? It tells you almost nothing about what stays. The only honest measure of your retirement readiness is your net worth. It's simple. That's everything you own, like your retirement accounts, home equity, cash, minus everything you owe. This is the exact metric the Federal Reserve uses in their survey of consumer finances, and that's the data we're going to use today to climb the 5-level staircase of American retirements. But wow, before we start climbing that staircase, we have to look at the gap. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a massive canyon. Current surveys looking ahead to 2026 show that the typical American thinks they need about $1.46 million to retire comfortably. But let's look at reality for households between 55 and 64, the folks standing quite literally at the doorway of retirement. Their median savings sits at just $185,000. There is a terrifying canyon between what people think they need and what they actually have in the bank. Let's break down how this actually plays out by looking at the 5 distinct levels Americans retire into, starting right at the bottom. Moving right along to Section 2, Levels 1 and 2, which are really all about survival. At the very base of our staircase, we hit the harsh reality of living on severely fixed budgets and doing edge-of-crisis planning. We start at Level 1, which we call the Social Security cliff. This represents the bottom quarter of all retirees. In hard numbers, we're talking about a household net worth below $70,000. But to be brutally honest with you, for a lot of people stuck on this level, the real number is practically zero. Over a quarter of American adults have absolutely nothing meaningfully saved for retirement. There's no magical investment portfolio generating income in the background for them. To really understand Level 1, let's look at a guy named Ron. Ron's entire retirement is built on one single pillar, a Social Security check averaging $2,710 a month. And that has to cover his rent, his groceries, his insurance, the whole shebang. So when the transmission on his 15-year-old car inevitably needed work, he had no choice but to throw it on a credit card. He's living in a state economists call precarity, where just one single surprise turns into an instant crisis. And here's a pretty wild detail from the data. When retirees recently got a 2.8% raise in their Social Security, standard Medicare Part B premiums jumped by nearly 10% at the exact same time. And since that premium comes directly out of the check, for people like Ron, that raise was quietly erased before he ever even saw a dime of it. Now, if you can manage to build up some savings, you move off that cliff and step up to Level 2, the paycheck retirement. This spans from that $70,000 mark up to roughly $410,000. And that top figure is super significant, because $410,000 is the exact median net worth for households in their late 60s and early 70s. This is the exact middle of the country. But Level 2 comes with a pretty major illusion. People see that $410,000 number and think, great, I've got cash to spend. Well, they don't. The vast majority of that wealth is entirely trapped inside their home equity. And the hard truth we all have to face is this: you cannot buy groceries with a hallway. Having a paid-off house is a massive achievement, for sure, but it is not generating monthly income to pay your electric bill. Think about Sandra. She's a classic Level 2 retiree. She has a $300,000 net worth, but her actual liquid retirement account is closer to $200,000. If we apply the standard 4% withdrawal rule to that, her account only safely generates about $660 a month. You add her Social Security to that, and she's running her entire life on roughly $32,000 a year. It's a remarkably tight budget with almost zero wiggle room. And the quiet threat hanging over Sandra's head every day? Healthcare. A single 65-year-old retiring today can expect to drop roughly $172,000 on healthcare across their retirement. So for a level 2 household, just one major medical event can swallow their flexible savings whole. So this forces a pretty pivotal question, right? We already know Dave and Mike made the exact same salary. So if income isn't the grand separator, what actually propels a person up this staircase? What separates the folks who are barely surviving from the ones who are truly thriving? Let's leave all this financial anxiety behind for a minute and start looking at the habits of abundance. All right, Section 3, Level 3, the comfortable retirement. We have officially arrived at the turning point in our staircase. This is where the air finally gets a little easier to breathe, where money completely stops being a source of low-level panic and instead becomes a tool that you actually direct. Level 3 runs from that median $410,000 all the way up to $1.9 million. This represents a wide band of Americans who finally have genuine, discretionary breathing room. They can book a trip without postponing it for 5 years, and they can help a grandchild with college without completely wrecking their own budget. Let's meet the Hendersons, a textbook Level 3 couple. Now, they were never high earners. He was a sales rep, she worked in school administration. They reached Level 3 through perfectly unglamorous everyday habits. First, early automation. Listen, they didn't save what was left over after spending, they spent what was left over after saving. That is a game changer. Second, they maintained a completely non-negotiable 15% savings rate. Third, they stayed invested through the fear. When the market crashed, they didn't panic and sell everything into cash, they just let time do its work. And finally, they entered retirement completely debt-free. Every single dollar of income they brought in funded their own life, not some bank. Now we're getting into the really rare air. Section 4, Levels 4 and 5, True Wealth. We are now entering the highest tiers of the staircase, where the fundamental question totally flips. It changes from, will the money last, to, what do I actually want to do with the rest of my life? Welcome to Level 4, the top 10% work optional tier, beginning around $1.9 million and running up toward $3 million. Do you know what you're really buying at this level? It's the complete and total disappearance of financial fear. You can weather a brutal market downturn or a major medical scare, and your plan isn't going to collapse. You have deep, genuine margin in your life. Now, what's really interesting here is who actually lives on Level 4. I mean, it's not just brain surgeons and CEOs. It's people like James, a perfectly ordinary project manager with a $2.4 million net worth. So how did he do it? Well, he did everything the Hendersons did, but he sprinkled in 3 extra things. First, he pushed his savings rate above 25% during his peak earning years. Second, he completely refused lifestyle creep. He drove paid-off cars, and he didn't run out and buy a bigger house just because he got a raise. Third, he fully maximized his tax-advantaged accounts. He treated things like his health savings account, which allows an $8,750 family contribution limit in 2026, as a stealth retirement account to tackle future healthcare costs. James didn't out-earn his neighbors. He simply outstructured them. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate paradigm shift as we approach the very top of the mountain. Levels 1 through 4 are essentially built by saving wages, taking a highly disciplined slice of your paycheck and investing it. But let's be real, a salary has a ceiling and your time has a ceiling. Level 5 is an entirely different game. It is built by owning assets, businesses, real estate, equity stakes. The wealth is completely detached from the hours you work. Finally, we reach Level 5, the generational tier. We are talking about the top 1% of retirees here, with a household net worth of $13.7 million and beyond. Up here, the engine driving the wealth changes completely. It's heavily driven by favorable tax codes that actively reward asset ownership and patience, while honestly kind of penalizing the simple act of earning and spending wages. Level 5 retirees have effectively unlimited financial choice. But the core principle here scales all the way down, shifting your mindset away from trading your time for money and moving toward owning things that grow on their own. Well, that's the right direction to head at literally any level. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, Section 5. Your trajectory is a choice. Look, if there's one incredibly important thread running through all of this, it's that income did not decide the outcome. If you want to completely change your trajectory, here is the exact sequential playbook of pure arithmetic. 1. Start early so compounding has decades to work its magic. 2. Automate your savings so you don't have to fight your own willpower every single month. 3. Push that savings rate toward 15% or beyond. 4. Stay invested through those scary, volatile years. Please don't sell out of fear. And 5. Adamantly refuse to let lifestyle creeps swallow your hard-earned raises. Moving up this staircase relies entirely on these repeated daily behaviors, not on magically landing a massive salary. Because remember, your level is not permanently assigned to you at birth. It's just a running total of your behaviors. And a running total? Well, that can always be changed. But here is the major catch. Knowing all these habits is completely useless unless you can actually stick to them. And at every single stage of your life, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and beyond, there are specific, highly predictable, age-based financial traps that are practically designed to knock you back down the staircase without you even noticing. Dave didn't end up struggling on level 1 because he didn't understand how a savings account works. He ended up there because he stepped into these invisible traps decade after decade. So the real question is, what are the hidden traps threatening your trajectory right now? That is a question you absolutely must answer if you want to protect your wealth. And honestly, it's where your real financial journey begins. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep building your trajectory.